Hey, Julia, how are you?
Good.
I'm going to record this because someone had a family emergency and someone else is sick. So this one will be recorded and posted.
Okay, sounds good.
If you, I'm about to announce this to the class, but I'm pushing all the presentations are just going to be on one day, which is, I think it's the 13th, or no, it's the, is that? It's December 8th.
Okay, that sounds good.
So
And I'll
you feel
like
comfortable driving up here that day?
that day, yeah, I can make arrangements to go there.
Okay, if something happens and you can't, I mean, we can zoom in, but I think it would be better. If you don't mind driving in, it would be nice to have you with your group in person.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated.
Okay,
The only vehicle that's so the thing is
I'm gonna share the screen and pull up the homework.
are you going to post the solutions?
Yes, I will. I am going to post the solutions. And then after Sunday, I'll post the solutions to the other one. To the
Okay.
homework. If it doesn't get done like by Monday, just send me an email to remind me to post.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Hello, everybody. All right. So tonight we're going to go over the chapter 10 through 12 homework, and then we'll go over chapter 10 and 12. And as I mentioned, when I'm grading it, I'll keep in mind that I need to do the homework before we really went over it. So that's it's a learning process. I'm not going to grade you on right or wrong answers. So we'll go over that homework, and then I will try to get caught up on all the homework this weekend. I mean, all the grading rather this weekend. And then this Sunday, the chapter, the last homework assignment is due. All right. So I told Julia to send me an email reminder if I don't post the solutions for you by Monday noon or so. So you have those solutions. And then for next week, and the exam, there's a study guide on Moodle already for the exam. And the exam's going to be next Wednesday. All right. So I made a change to the schedule. Originally, I had all of our project presentations on one day, which is doable with this amount of people. And then when they extended the semester, I thought, well, maybe we can do it over 2 days. But I really feel like it's getting compressed, and I don't have enough time to really talk about the project with you. So I changed it back to the 8th. I changed it back to 1 day. So here's the revised schedule. So next Wednesday is the exam. And then on the 24th, that's going to be a live Zoom session. That's Wednesday, the 24th. You don't have to physically come here. And that's basically a Q&A and about the project. So, and then on the 1st, well, actually, this is probably what I'm going to do. I was thinking about this today. I'm probably going to do some Zoom recordings and post them as I'm going through a lot of the stuff you need to know for the project. So like there's things in Moodle about economic indicators and so forth. And so to give you some more time to work on the project, probably by next Tuesday, by the end of the day or by the evening of next Tuesday, I'm going to have some little Zoom things recorded. So you can go onto Zoom and look at those recordings to give you some more information about the project. And then on next Wednesday, I'm just going to have Zoom up there. You're not required to attend class, but if you have some questions about the project, you can ask me questions. Okay, and then this frees up a whole nother class for us. So then when we come back on Wednesday, the 1st of December after Thanksgiving, basically that whole thing can be devoted to the project. Any questions that you might have, you can work on your project here and so forth. But that's too late for me to really talk about it in detail, initially. So that's why I'm going to post some lectures for you about the project. That way you don't have to all be here and live on the 24th. Since I'm sure you guys, a lot of you have already made plans. Some of you have probably already made plans to go out of town before they before they reduced our holiday. Okay, so just to repeat then, exam next week, optional Zoom session for Q&A the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I'm going to have some recorded things online. I'll send you an email once they're up there on Moodle. And then on the 1st, that's just devoted to the project, that class. And then the presentations are going to be on the 8th. So just 20 minutes per group, basically plan for a 15-minute presentation. Just, you can use PowerPoint or whatever you want to use make some slides from your project. And you'll do the plan for 15 minutes and then 5 minutes Q&A. And then the final reports are going to be due Sunday, December 12th. Then you're done with the class. So, and then for the exam, this exam is not going to be multiple choice. It's going to be about 11 problems and short answers. And so you'll see that on the study guide. There's the study guide is pretty specific. So just go over the notes. I tell you on the study guide some of the class notes to really focus on. And you should be in good shape for the exam if you follow the study guide. There's not going to be any of those weird questions like you've had on the homework. It's going to be pretty straightforward from my notes and so forth. Okay, any questions? Yes. It's 11. Hang on, let me pull this. It's not that long, really. It's hang on, let me get out of that. Let's see here. Okay, it's 11. It's 11 problems and short answers. So you should be done with the test in an hour and a half or so. An hour at the earliest, maybe 2 hours at the latest. It's not that long. And it's short answer questions and problems. So just 11. And so here's the study guide here. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the solutions here. All right, so for chapter 10, for 10.1, it says here for each category, so this is the airline industry, or no, this is the airline one. Okay, for each category, indicate which condition is associated with higher rivalry among competitors. Okay, so the number of firms is going to be the higher the number of firms, the higher the rivalry is. The fixed costs, the higher the fixed costs are, the more rivalry you're going to have. Product differentiation. If you have a low level of product differentiation, in other words, if all your products are the same, you're going to have high rivalry. And then industry growth. If you're in a very low growth industry,
there's going to be high rivalry. And then if the buyer switching costs are low, in other words, if it's easy for customers to switch products, you're going to have high rivalry. Okay. So those are associated with high rivalry. Lots of firms, high fixed costs, low level of product differentiation, low industry growth, and low buyer switching costs. Any questions? Okay. Okay, so this question here, this was a little bit subjective. To increase a company's performance, the manager suggests that the company needs to increase the value of its product to customers. Describe 3 ways in which this might be incorrect. Okay, so what are they leaving out there? If the manager just says increase the value to customers, what's the elephant in the room there? What are they not discussing? What are they leaving out?
It's price.
The price, or what are companies in business to make? Profit. Yeah, they're not even discussing profit at all. So here's some issues. Here's some problems here's 3 ways where the advice might be incorrect. Because what if you increase the value, but you don't increase the price? That's not going to increase profit. So there's no point in doing that. If you increase the value, but you don't increase the price, wouldn't work. If the value increases and the price increases and the costs increase all by the same amount, then that's not a solution. And then what if the value increases, the price increases, but the cost is greater than the price increase? Then that could be another reason why it would be incorrect. Okay, so why, Julia? Okay, what did you get for this one? Why might intangible resources like human capital or intellectual assets be a more sustainable competitive advantage than tangible resources? So what do they mean by intangible resources? And how would that be better for give you a better competitive advantage?
Well, that's like patents, trademarks, and things that will secure your resources.
Right. So like, if you have, well, think about Starbucks. There's a lot of ambiguity to Starbucks. Starbucks just has this aura. If you go to Starbucks, it's good. Of course, the product is good, but it's the whole ambiance. It's kind of an intangible of going to Starbucks, even though another place might have just as good coffee. McDonald's actually has really good coffee, but you don't see people lining up for McDonald's to get coffee because, Starbucks has this intangible. And so anyway, there's this new company I've been reading about called Dutch Brothers. It's out of Oregon. And it's a coffee place, Dutch Brothers Coffee, and they have drive-through coffee places. They have kiosks where they set up, and they're a publicly traded company now, and their price is just skyrocketed. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can make inroads over the years in a company like Starbucks. But anyway, so and also if you think about the human capital and the intellectual assets of Apple, the intangibles of the perception of having an Apple product. So those things, those are harder to imitate. You just can't, you can't imitate those. Okay. So let's talk about the 5 forces in the airline industry and see whether this is attractive or not. Okay. So what did you put for supplier power for the airlines? Is supplier power low or high?
Very high.
Yeah, supplier power is very high. Why is that?
Limited supplies.
Oh, go ahead.
There's limited supplies in that industry. Flight industry,
Limited supplies of the.
airline industry.
So you mean there's just a few airliners making planes? Okay, so there's just a few manufacturers. Okay, what else?
prices are higher, I guess, because of that. I mean, they can kind of set the prices how they want.
The airplane manufacturers.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so they have, so there's a lot of different facets when you talk about supplier power. You've got labor unions. The airlines have notoriously had these really strong labor unions that have really dictated what the wages are going to be, dictated the supply of labor and so forth. So that's been a big problem for them. The manufacturers have a lot of power because there's relatively few manufacturers. Fuel is a problem. There's little supplier power. They have little power over that. And then the airports have a lot of power regarding the gates and so forth. So supplier power is very high. So let me, on a side note here, for what do you really want? What's most beneficial? You want low supplier power. So think about this in relation to your company that you've been assigned. You want supplier power to be low. If at all possible, that is, those companies are more profitable. Okay, let's think about buyer power. So what did you put for buyer power? High or low? Do we have power over the airlines? Yeah, because we can go online. Do any of you ever use like Cheapo Air or Expedia? We can easily switch from one carrier to another. And so have you ever noticed, for example, some places it's really cheap to fly, and then other places it's a lot more expensive. And I'm not just talking about because it's more mileage. Even sometimes when it's further to fly, it's cheaper to fly to a certain city versus another one that might even be closer. So why is that? In other words, why might it be cheaper to fly to Las Vegas versus New Mexico versus Albuquerque? Oh, go ahead, Logan.
So like, depending on where you're at, sometimes it's cheaper to fly to like Atlanta or something, because that's where a lot of like airplane hubs are. So if it's already, if they have to like refuel or whatever at that hub, or they have to do maintenance at that hub, it might be cheaper because they're going that way.
There's more, and also where there's more competition. So if it's a hub for an airline and there's a lot more airplanes flying in there, a lot more companies flying into that hub, then it's going to be cheaper to fly. So it's cheaper to fly into Vegas than, I mentioned Albuquerque because I've had to go to some conferences in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it just seems to be really difficult to get there. You can't get a direct flight, it's more expensive. But then to go to Houston or something's really cheap. To go to LA, it's cheap. New York is super cheap. And so buyer power, I mean, that's kind of off track, but buyer power is moderately high because we can pick whatever airline we want to most places. And it's it is relative. I mean, it doesn't cost us to go from one airline to another. I mean, unless we have a bunch of miles or we want to build miles with a specific airline, it doesn't really matter. So have any of you guys flown Spirit? So you've had the displeasure of flying Spirit. Isn't it awful?
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bad.
And like they're the most strict when it came to like wearing a mask or whatever. They were so strict. Like you couldn't have they wouldn't let you get on the flight if you had like one of those gaiters. Like, I don't know what it's called, but it's like it looks like a sock, like a thin stuff that.
What was the problem with that?
I don't know. It said it wasn't thick enough, or like you couldn't wear a mask that had the little opening for like oxygen or whatever. I don't know what it's called, the performance masks. They couldn't let you wear those either. Like they were strict about the stupidest things.
Well, they have, this is the only positive thing about Spirit. They now have a direct flight from New Orleans to Cancun, which is really cool, for like $110 each way, or sometimes it's like $71 each way. But of course, by the time you pay for your bag and the seats, that balloons it up another $100. but it's really cool. It's really easy to get from New Orleans to Cancun now on Spirit because of this direct flight. If you've ever been to Cancun, it's a hassle if you have to go to Dallas, Houston, or Florida. But they are terrible. I just, I cross my fingers every time I fly Spirit Airlines. And the employees are so bad. I mean, they're not, it's even worse now with COVID. Because they just, it's like they just pick these people up off the street. With no training at all. So the last time I flew Spirit, we were at the gate, okay? And the lady tells me at the gate that the gates changed for the flight. And I said, where did it go to? I mean, where's the new flight? And she said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, maybe you can look it up and see, because how do I know which gate to go to? It was really crazy. But anyway, so, you know, it is easy to, you know, it's easy for us to switch if we want, but there's some really low end airlines now. It's crazy. Anyway, substitutes. Okay. I don't necessarily agree with this. What do you think? They're saying that car or train can be a significant threat.
Not anymore.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe if you're back east and going to take the train from Philadelphia to New York, but people are not going to say, I'm going to drive instead of fly for the most part. So I don't see that that's a threat, but you know, maybe in a more regional area. Now this was done, of course, before COVID. So then they're talking about information technology, video conferencing, more of a threat for it's more of a threat for the long distance growth industry. So what do you think about the power of substitutes now that we're in the post-COVID life? We've got a post-COVID situation. Do you think that the airline industry has and will be permanently affected by fewer business travelers?
I feel Zoom is more of a threat than a train.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. For sure, right. Have any of you traveled on a train?
No.
Don't, oh, well, you're from,
In Europe.
oh yeah, and you don't count because Europe, I mean, traveling on a train in Europe is awesome.
Yeah, I wish that was the big.
Yeah. That doesn't count. Traveling on a train in the US is terrible. Terrible.
The quality is so different.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Europe is wonderful traveling on a train. But we had some friends who came to visit us in New Orleans. They were from California, friends of my parents. And they said that they came to our house and visited us. Well, we don't live in New Orleans, but they came to New Orleans. And she says, we're going to take the riverboat up to Chicago. Because you know, you can do a riverboat up the Mississippi. You didn't know that? It's kind of cool. You can take a riverboat. We're going to take a riverboat up the Mississippi to Chicago, and we're going to come back on the train. It's going to be so cool, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't say anything because I had been on a train before, and it's not romantic or fun because they're dirty in America. They're always late. So anyway, when they get back, she said, I am never taking the train again because it was like 5 or 6 hours late. It was a mess. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate in our country that we don't have decent train service. Hopefully that'll change at some point. But anyway, you're right. Video conferencing, Zoom is a much bigger threat. And now that, you know, after post-COVID, a lot of, I think, well, what's your thoughts on companies? Do you think they're sending people out to travel as much?
And what about the new Facebook Meta thing? You know, metaverse where you be able to basically, it's like virtual reality.
Oh, what is that? I haven't read about that.
I've heard from my sister, don't know how true, like what's going on, but you know, virtual reality has been a very popular pastime usually. But if you can basically join a meeting or a room virtually from like basically a Zoom conference, but you're able to see everything.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. So it's like you're in the room.
Like you're in a room. Think of Star Wars when they do
Okay.
all holograms.
Hologram. Okay. Well, I tell you though, nothing compares to being face to face with people. And I'm actually going. Oh, the other thing I don't know if I told you this, but next Wednesday, the exam's gonna be proctored. I'm going to a conference, a face-to-face conference, so come and see me like Monday or Tuesday if you have any questions, or you can text me on Wednesday. But I'm so excited to go to an actual live face-to-face conference, because what's the fun in a video conference? There's no fun in a video conference. You know, you don't get to travel, you don't get to, if you don't have the same engagement, level of engagement. But you're right, a lot of companies, instead of sending people on planes, paying for their hotel rooms, their booze and their dinners and everything else, if it's just a routine situation, they're doing the video conferencing more for sure. But, you know, if it's maybe an initial client, you know, they're trying to win a client or something, or if it's something initial, they might send somebody, but I don't think that business class has bounced, business traveler has bounced back yet. And that may be a while, and some of it may be a permanent loss. So there are, you know, that is a substitute, definitely, the Zoom, and what's the other one?
Skype?
Oh yeah, Skype, that's kind of dead, I
Yeah.
think. No, I'm thinking of the Microsoft one.
Google Meet, Teams.
Yeah, Teams, Google Meets. Well, I attended this one video conference where they had Teams, and it was a disaster. I don't know, have you guys used Teams? Did it work?
Disaster.
Yeah, okay, because I just thought it was because we were all academics and didn't know technology. But yeah, it's not very user friendly. I find Zoom user friendly. And once I learned Zoom, I was like, I'm not learning anything else. I'm using Zoom, and I stuck with that. Anyway, so there are some substitutes. Okay, rivalry is high. Let's see. Yeah, the airlines are very competitive, and the fixed costs are high. Industry growth is low, so the rivalry is high for these airlines. And then entry. So this is kind of interesting, an interesting point that they make. Even though there are significant barriers to entry, it makes you wonder, how are these new airlines able to compete? Like we've got Spirit. There's some other low cost airlines that have just recently started up. Well, this is why, because they're leasing their jets. But one of my friends who told me, who won't fly Spirit, by the way, he used to work for Continental, he was saying, do you know how old those planes are that Spirit is leasing? They're old planes. Anyway, so, you know, even though there are significant entry costs, if you lease your fleet versus buying it, then that's going to cut it down. So overall, this industry is not very attractive. I've been following the stock market for a long time. I've never heard any experts recommend the airline industry, recommend an airline stock, except in the depths of COVID when they were so beaten down. Then they started, you know, kind of recommending, but it's not a particularly attractive industry. And one of the main problems stems from, well, you guys are too young to remember this, but the airline industry used to be, it was a regulated industry. It wasn't competitive. It was federally regulated. And when Reagan was elected, the air traffic controllers went on strike, and all airlines basically ground to a halt. And he ended up firing they fired all the air traffic controllers and replaced them with new people or non-union people. So anyway, when they deregulated the airline industry, it did lower prices, but it changed. But the problem with this industry and why it's so unattractive is because there's basically the ghosts of regulation, or the bad effects of regulation is still there. And this is one of them, is that when they were regulated, they had all these labor union contracts that they agreed to, where the wages are really high and really not competitive. Now it's gotten a little bit better. Anyway, so have you been hearing all these horror stories about canceled flights and all this? And so part of that evidently is because of a lot of people quitting, a lot of people retiring early in the airline industry, and some of the airlines are requiring COVID vaccines, and people didn't want to get the COVID vaccine, so they were just quitting. And so they're having some real labor issues. Anyway, so airline industry not particularly attractive. Okay, and then were there any group questions for 10? No, okay, so 11. See, this is the carry trade. Okay, so in 2014, the euro was trading at $1.35. By 2015, it had fallen to $1.10 due to falling European interest rates. Explain the fall in the price of the euro using supply and demand curves. Okay, well, basically, the demand, if the price of the euro, let's see, if interest rates fall, then see, they want you to compare the euro to dollars. They really weren't clear on this. So if you have a decline in interest rates in the US, that's going to increase the demand for dollars. So people are going to sell euros and buy dollars because they're going to want to invest where interest rates are higher. So basically, what you've got is an increase in the supply of dollars. And so if you go in the book in chapter 11, where it talks about, I think it's a golf example, Tijuana and the US, that it shows you how the demand would increase for the US. Okay, so anyway, that's we're just think about wherever interest rates are higher, then you're going to have an increase in demand for that currency because people are going to want to invest in that currency. All right, and then Brexit. So Brexit this happened a few years ago. Brexit was when Great Britain decided to leave the euro, leave the European Union. So they still, Great Britain always used the pound, they didn't use the euro, but they're leaving the euro, they're leaving the Eurozone. And so what happened was when they announced that they were going to leave the Eurozone, the pound depreciated by 17% against the dollar. It was really dramatic. And there were all these fears that the Eurozone would fall apart. And so basically you've got two different things going on. You've got the fear of uncertainty causes this flight to safety. So Europeans are going to sell euros and buy dollars. And this creates the demand for dollars, which increases the price of the dollar. And so that's what had happened when they announced the Brexit, which they're still trying to figure out, by the way. Okay, this is kind of a review from the paperback book. What are the effects of a pound devaluation on tourism and bank profits? So if the pound devalues, okay, so imports and tourism, and then the profits of US banks. So first, let's talk about imports and tourism to Great Britain. So the currency, if the pound devalues, that's going to hurt the foreign suppliers because it makes their goods coming in from other countries imported to Britain more expensive for domestic consumers. The quantity of exports is going to fall. It hurts domestic consumers and foreign suppliers, but it's going to help domestic suppliers and consumers. Okay, and then tourism is an export. And so think that if you have a demand for domestic currency, a currency devaluation helps foreign consumers and domestic suppliers. So if the pound is devalued, it's going to be more expensive for people from Great Britain to travel, but cheaper for people to come to Great Britain. Okay, so here's an interesting one. What if what's the effect of a pound depreciation on Whirlpool? So this Whirlpool appliance sells in the UK, but it's built in Europe. What is the effect of a pound depreciation on Whirlpool's profit? Okay, so they're incurring the cost in euros, but they earn revenue in pounds. So the devaluation is going to reduce. Oops. Is going to reduce the second. Try to get this smaller. So it's going to reduce the revenue relative to the cost. So its profit margin is going to decrease. Okay, so if they're making these washers in Europe and the pound is devalued, it's going to It's going to reduce their profits. Okay, and was 5 assigned? Okay, this one was though, right? 6? No, 7 was not either. Okay. All right. And then for 12, which ones were assigned for 12?
1 through 6.
1 through 6. Okay. Okay, so this parking lot question. So what did you put for that? What did you put for the parking lot question? So the demand is elastic. If your parking lot is only 80% full, are you optimizing?
Drop the price.
Yeah, no, they should drop the price because demand is elastic, so they can drop the price in order to increase revenues. So that's basically what they're saying here. The only way, and I didn't expect you guys to get this, but then they say at the end here, if it's 80% because there's fewer people on, if that's an average, in other words, if it's at capacity during the weekdays, but not at capacity during the weekends because no one's working, then that's how you're getting the 80%. There's probably nothing you can do. But if it's at 80% all the time, then you should drop the price. Okay, parking at Cowboy Stadium. So what would efficient revenue management apply for the pricing at Cowboy Stadium on typical game days? How about for the Super Bowl? And how about for any smaller events that fill the lot by less than half the lot? Okay, so how should they price their parking? What do these stadiums usually do? So typical game days.
Average.
Okay, Super Bowl.
They
We're
raise
gonna
it.
jack it way up, okay, and then smaller events that'll fill less than half the lot, probably be down again, because they have a fixed capacity. And so you can increase the price, of course, for Super Bowls. And then they bring up this interesting thing at the end here. Stadium parking and stadium tickets are complements, possibly. Typically they are. So lower prices at the lower parking prices may increase demand for game tickets. So if you don't have any substitute parking situations, like if you went up to at LSU Stadium, if you've been to an LSU game, you've seen the people out there selling their spaces on their front yards and stuff. So you've got other choices. I actually have never parked in a parking lot at LSU. I just go to someone's yard and park. And so that would be a substitute. But if you don't have that, most of these professional stadiums don't have that situation. So if they're complements, they could, if they lower the parking prices, if they're having trouble selling tickets, that could increase the demand for the tickets. Okay. This one, some high-end retailers place their most expensive products right near the entranceway of the store where consumers will see them first and sell their more popular, better selling items further back. Okay, so why do they do that? Why is the clearance stuff usually in the back?
I want you to walk through it.
Yeah. So they want you to get, it's the psychology of pricing.
That's why Costco has their rotisserie chicken way in the back.
Oh, that chicken, yeah. So I was watching this thing about Costco and a couple of years ago, and the whole psychology of Costco. And I thought this was really interesting. They said that they found that when people are faced with too many choices, and I've been guilty of this too. If you're faced with too many choices, it's just too confusing and you just don't buy anything. So that's why Costco usually only has one choice of something, 1 or 2 choices. And they've done the research and they say too many choices is not good. And so they just have, that's why they're limited in their variety as a result. So yeah, the chickens are super popular. So you got to go all the way to the back for the chickens.
They lose profit. That's an item that they lose money on.
Oh, really?
But because you walk away the back, you usually pick up a few things on the way.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's expensive to go to Costco because it's cheap, but you're buying in such bulk, it really adds up. Yeah, quite a bit. So that we do have a Costco in New Orleans.
And that's where
Oh, there is one in Baton Rouge? Okay. They're much better than Sam's. I'd have to say. So anyway, so they want you to go through the store. And then the other reason is if you see the more expensive items first, as you're going back and seeing these cheaper items, you're feeling like you're getting a better deal and you're more apt to buy. So it's a whole psychology. Okay, so this one, when the Macintosh computer was introduced in 1982, Apple made it difficult for these third-party developers to develop software on the platform. Then fast forward, when they start making the iPhones, they made it relatively easy for these third-party developers to make the apps. Compare and contrast the two strategies. Okay, so I don't know if they mentioned this in the book, but before Apple owned, like with the Macintosh, they owned both the hardware and the software. And so it behooved them to make it difficult for these third-party people because they wanted to maximize their profits. But with the iPhone, Apple doesn't really develop any of the apps. So they were trying to make it easy for these third-party developers. And that's one of the reasons why Apple has had such an increase in market share above the other phones, because they had so many more apps. I don't know what the case is now, but do any of you have an Android? How many of you have an iPhone? Yeah, so I mean, they don't, but whenever I talk to a former student or a current student at one of these phone stores in the past, they always tell me that the Apples are sturdier. The other ones break easier. And they have a lot more complements, complementary products with the apps. And so that's one thing that Steve Jobs was really big on, was having these Apple products all complement one another in addition to having these apps. And so it keeps customer loyalty, because once you've learned one thing, and if all your products interact with one another, it makes the switching costs relatively high. Okay. Concert prices have increased coincidentally with illegal downloading of music off the internet. Okay, so why has this happened?
Does artists have to keep their money somewhere?
Yeah, they're not making money off the records anymore because of all this illegal downloading. So they're forced to go on tour. And so the concert prices have increased, and that's where they're making their money now, instead of the records, because of all the illegal downloading and so forth. So if you think about the music industry, it's really changed dramatically over the years. We used to have a label, they would produce your records and so forth, you'd go on tour, but now you've got YouTube and all these illegal downloading. It's a lot harder to make money. It's a lot harder for these people to make money these days. And after that thing that happened in Austin or in Houston, did that concert, that might be an issue for a while too, with the last weekend. Okay, so before illegal downloading, concert prices were kept low to help sell records. They were compliments, but after illegal downloading, they changed the whole calculus of it. And the concerts are really independent of the record sales, of the music sales. Okay, rock stations and rock concerts. Okay, so in 2005, the Clear Channel spun off concert promoter Live Nation into an independent company. How would this affect prices for concert tickets and rates for the radio programming? Okay, so what they're getting at here in this chapter, when they're complements, you should raise the price of both. If they're substitutes, you should decrease the price. Or if you buy two competitors, you should decrease the price. So what they're saying here is that the radio station and the concerts, before they were complements, but when they spun off, they weren't complements anymore. So they should reduce the prices on both. After spinning off the complement, they should reduce the prices. Okay, anyway, this is, for some reason I copied 12 twice. Any questions on the homework? Okay, go ahead. If you have a hard copy, go ahead and turn it in and let's take a break. Take a break till 7. And then we will, then we'll go over chapters 10 through 15.
If you was there, it would have been. It was just like. Calm down. We're all happy here. I had a good video. I was I was crying because it was only reason I was funny. And I was like, it's given to us. Okay. It's not. It feels all right. Really nice. And it was actually.
This is your last day of the class, like, this class is your last class of the week, right?
Oh, yeah. Gravel is. Yeah.
Did we go over chapter 10 last week?
Some of it,
I thought we did, because I remember talking about Purdue.
yeah.
We talked about washing machines.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we went over this already. Okay. All right, let me go to chapter 11.
That's what I'm- Correct. Yeah, come on. How much it is to subscribe to something? I don't know.
It's a free, it's a free trial. It's I'm trying for the 12th. Right.
Girl, okay, so I know this, right?
I'm trying to watch them all like keys, because the show still is like current, but I like to see that.
I'm subscription meter on this when it gets just without answering. Summer, I'm gonna do a 7-week trial, 7-day trial. That's what you got. I can't make any mistakes. That's what this girl did. She kept making over and over. I said, I'm telling him, because I don't watch the show. And, you know,
It's on Stars.
it's
so
on
you gotta pay
Stars,
extra.
you gotta pay, like, you know how you get like a 7-day. free-
You can get a
free
7-day
trial?
free trial, but after that, you gotta pay
Yeah, so I'm
$6.99.
gonna just keep making it. Keep making
But
it.
I got mine through Hulu.
Oh, girl, I use something else.
Oh.
Girl, I can't.
So I'm having this special on Amazon. You can get, it was Showtime and Amazon Music for 99 cents a month for 3 months for both of them. And then they're gonna charge you.
So wait, Amazon Prime don't come with all that? Cause I have Prime TV.
No, they still charge you for those channels.
Oh, okay. That ain't right.
Did we go over chapter 11 too?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's start here with chapter 11. Okay, so let's take a look at chapter 11. So exchange rates, we've talked about exchange rates before, but they're basically determined by supply and demand. So if you think about, there's investors worldwide, and investors invest in stocks. They also like to invest in cash.
they like to invest in CDs and government bonds and so forth. So hypothetically, if interest rates increased in the US relative to other countries, that's gonna increase the demand for the dollar because people will want to invest in CDs and government bonds here. So they'll sell their currency, buy dollars to invest where the higher interest rate is. So that will cause our currency to appreciate against foreign currencies. And so, and domestic investors too would behave the same way. So of course, then we've already talked about this, the valuations are going to help domestic producers. Okay, because if our currency is devalued, it makes our exports cheaper, but it hurts domestic consumers and foreign producers. Okay, so price bubbles. We've had these really interesting bubbles. We've had, well, if you go all the way back in history, back to the, I think the 16, it was either the 16 or I think it was the 1600s, they had the Dutch tulip bubble. Have you ever read about that in your economics classes? So, the Dutch are big into tulips. They were cross-breeding these tulips to get these really pretty tulips. One of my undergrad economics books says that in today's dollars, a tulip bulb, the price of some tulip bulbs went up to like the equivalent of $73,000 in today's dollars. It was crazy. So people were buying these tulip bulbs, and when you have these bubbles, the price just keeps going up. And people keep buying because they're afraid of getting left out. The bubble's going to burst, but you don't know when that's going to happen. And so it's really an interesting phenomenon because these bubbles just happen and then they burst. And so what happened with the tulip bubble was eventually, it's a series, think of it as greed versus fear. People are buying these tulip bulbs because they want to make money, but eventually fear will overtake greed and they'll start selling. And then once one person starts selling, then more people sell and the bubble bursts. So why did, let's see, we had the dot-com bubble. We've had the dot-com bubble, we had the housing bubble. So let's talk about the dot-com bubble was, that was 20 some years ago. Let's talk about the housing bubble. They talk about it a little bit in the paperback book. How did that housing bubble happen? I mean, everybody knew a 20% increase in real estate prices a year wasn't sustainable. Why did prices keep going up and why did people keep buying houses? How did that bubble happen? And we had the dot-com bubble in the stock market too. So how do those bubbles happen? You think? And what causes them to burst? No ideas out there? Like,
Was the housing bubble because everyone was getting approved and they couldn't afford it?
yeah, so it started where they wanted to increase homeownership. Right. So just think about this. You have a certain supply of homes, okay? Now all of a sudden the demand has increased because more people are getting loans. And so the demand increases because more people are getting loans. So more people are looking, the price goes up because demand has increased, okay? Then if you were a seller and you saw houses going up like this, as a seller, you're thinking, I'm not going to sell right now. I'm going to wait. And so supply decreases even more. You had a fixed amount of supply, demand goes up, but now supply goes down because people want to wait to sell, and then demand goes up even more. So you have this real shortage of housing, and you've got the prices just keep going up. Also, they relaxed the lending regulations. So it was really easy to get a loan. And so people were getting these loans for these houses. Just to give you an example, let's say you bought a house in California for $200,000. The next year it goes up by 100,000. You go to the bank and you get a line of credit. You buy another house and you're going to rent it out with that line of credit. Or you sell your existing house and you buy a more expensive house. And so people were just like moving up the ladder the housing ladder, buying more and more expensive homes. And so you might ask yourself in hindsight, everybody knows it's not sustainable. Eventually it'll burst, but nobody wants to get left out, right? And so people just keep buying these houses. And so what happened eventually is the interest rates went up. And they had all these mortgages that were adjustable rate mortgages. And so people couldn't afford the payments when interest rates went up. They started defaulting on these loans. And then the credit market tightened. It went from giving a loan to everybody to hardly giving loans to anybody. And so then that caused the whole house of cards to fall. And then it was exacerbated on the other end, because now you had housing prices falling. There were no buyers, because if you're a buyer and housing prices are going down, you're going to wait, right? You want to wait for the bottom. So it was a big bubble that burst. And so there's a really interesting thing in the book. They talk about these bubbles, the result of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the expectation of an increase in price fulfills this increase in demand. And that expectation causes the sellers to delay selling. Both factors cause the price to increase. Then finally, when fear overtakes greed, the bubble bursts, but no one can predict when. Okay, so that happened, we had that housing bubble going on really from 2000 to 2006, 2000, and I think it burst around 2007. So this one guy named Schiller correctly predicted the housing bubble. This is really interesting. So if you look on page 144 on 11.4, so the indifference principle basically is saying that, there has to be an equilibrium. And so what he's saying here is that it should, in a long run equilibrium, it should be the same cost to either rent or to buy. And so you can see here from 1987, pretty much all the way to 2001, it was a ratio of 1 renting to buying. Look what happened during the bubble. It was a 1.8 to 1 price to rent ratio. So $1.80 per unit to buy compared to $1, almost twice as expensive to buy versus renting. So that was a predictor that we were going to have this bubble. And so of course, if you were, let's say really starting in 2000, you would have felt like a sucker from 2000 all the way to 2006. But then it finally did burst. You just don't know when it's going to happen. And then the same thing, and then this is homeownership rates. So homeownership rates have typically been around 64%. And they went up to 69% during this bubble, which is not too high. Because they raised them by giving people loans that they couldn't pay back. Now this is really interesting too. The same Schiller also called the stock market bubble, the .com bubble. So you're gonna be taking the finance class. So this is interesting. Let me spend a few minutes to explain PE ratios to you. But you might have got it in accounting, but anyway, PE ratios. So the PE ratio, remember, equals the price per share, the price of a stock, divided by the earnings per share. Okay, so right now, the average PE ratio is usually around 20 or so for the market in general. And so if you have the average, let's say the S&P 500 average equals about 20 times. That means that people are willing to pay 20 times earnings for a stock. Okay, so what Schiller did was he said during the .com bubble, the average PE ratios went all the way up to 45 for the market. So that tells you that stocks are overvalued. Look at what happened here. So during, some of you weren't even born then, but during the .com bubble, we had all these .com companies who weren't making any money. So just imagine a situation here. The average, you can see the historical average is usually, actually, the arithmetic mean is 16.7, the P ratio for the market. So if I said 20, that's actually a little high. So let's say that you have this company, let's just say it's a .com company. And most of these companies didn't make any profits at all. They were just new companies, not making any profits. So let's just assume they had $1 in profits. So let's say that the PE ratio equaled 20. Let's say the price was $20 a share of the stock. And let's say they were earning $1. Earnings per share was $1. That would give you a PE ratio of 20 times. Let's say that a lot of these companies, the price just went way up. Let's say the price of that stock went up to $100. Well, if it increased to 100, now the PE ratio is going to be 100, right? Some of them were up at around $200. Still no profits. It's reminding me, this whole thing with the .com bubble 20 years ago is reminding me of Bitcoin and all these different Bitcoins, where people are saying that, you know, they're buying all the speculative stuff, trying to get rich quick. It's not going to last, I don't think. There's going to be regulations. There'll be different reasons, but it's not going to last. So what people were saying during the .com bubble was, when analysts would say, why would you buy a company with a 200 PE ratio? It's way overvalued. The price is super high and they're not making any money. The average is only 16. They would say, well, we're on the cusp of a new industrial revolution with the .com stocks, that the fundamentals are dead. Well, guess what happened? Finally, if you look at right here, this is 1994. This is April of 2000. Finally, people woke up and said, well, they're not making any money. I've been holding on to the stock for several years and I don't know when they're going to start making money. I've made a bunch of money in the market. I better sell. Fear over to greed. It's all psychology. And it just, as fast as it went up, you see, it went down. And so as the market started to go down, these PE ratios went down. So anyway, Schiller was saying all along, you can look at PE ratios and predict a bubble when they get out of whack. Now I looked last week because I'm teaching this investments class and we have this contest going on. The PE ratio is around 29 right now. So we're not in bubble territory, but stocks are pretty pricey. In fact, since we've had this run up last week, it's probably even higher. And so that can be an indication of the downturn. So anyway, that's what they're talking about here with this indifference principle. It can tell you when prices have deviated from the long run equilibrium. Happened with rents versus buying a house. It happened with PE ratios, with the market. So that's a good indicator. If you look at the average PE ratios to tell you if the stock market's overvalued or not. So why, now I was reading that we're not in a bubble, even though the PE ratio is at 30, they're saying we're not in a bubble. And this is why, because of lower interest rates. Our interest rates are historically low. So what does that mean for companies when interest rates are low?
Money is cheap.
Money is really cheap. Okay, so if interest rates are low, stock prices tend to go up because it's cheap for money, it's cheap for CapEx is cheap. It's cheap for companies to get capital. And then housing prices go up too because it's cheap for us to get loans. And so that's why we're not in a bubble with the market. We may have a little correction, and one of the reasons we're not in the bubble is because interest rates are so low. Now, and then also, of course, we haven't talked since last Wednesday. Did you notice what happened to the market on Friday? It was crazy. The market way up on Friday, up all last week, way up on Friday, because Gottlieb came out, the doctor, not Fauci, but the other doctor that was being interviewed all through, the dark-haired guy, remember him? They would interview Gottlieb all the time on the news. He would talk about COVID. Anyway, he said the pandemic's over. He says this on Friday. Then Pfizer comes out with a pill. They said that is 87 or 89% effective against COVID. Not a pill that you can take, instead of getting a shot. And then, oh, the jobs report. There was a really good jobs report that more jobs were added than they expected. So that all happened on Friday. So that really boosted the markets on Friday. So again, we're probably not in a bubble. We might have a little pullback, but they're saying, you know, there's a lot of macroeconomic factors that are coming into play. Low interest rates, good jobs numbers and so forth. So those are all things you can incorporate into your reports. Now, today the market's down because today they said that inflation is the highest, that we've had the highest increase in inflation in 30 years. So inflation is on the rise. It's not going to be an issue yet. It's not a huge issue, but we are seeing rising prices. And they said this is the biggest monthly increase that we've seen in 30 years. That came out today. But anyway, you know, if you think about just in the general, you know, really getting back to real estate markets they're regional, of course. And so I still think it's probably cheaper to buy a house than to rent. So that tells you that prices aren't high enough in a way. We've got, it's still, because interest rates are so low, it's still cheaper to buy typically than to rent. So anyway, those are just some bubbles, the tulip bubble, the .com bubble, then we have the housing bubble. Are we going to have another real estate bubble or another stock bubble? Not in the near term, but you can't predict these. We'll have another bubble at some point because it's human nature. It's the whole greed versus fear situation. Are we having a Bitcoin bubble? Bitcoin's at $65,000 last I looked. So are we having, I guess the correct term would be crypto. Are we having a crypto bubble? You know, so there's this coin. Oh, have you guys heard of this one? This is how crazy, you know, crazy speculating, how crazy the speculating is. Recently, now I lost my how crazy speculating is these days. So you've heard of Dogecoin, the meme coin based on the dog. So as a joke, they came up with the Shiba Inu coin. That's a dog breed, if you don't know. So the Shiba Inu coin, so I went over a couple weeks ago, I went to my son-in-law's house and he had sent me this link. He said, Sherry, did you look at your email? I said, no. He said, look at that link. And the link was the biggest trade of all time. Okay. So they don't know who it was, but they just tracked this person. When Shiba Inu, when that meme coin came out, I guess it was a year, I don't know when it was, over a year ago. This guy or girl, this person bought $8,000 worth of this coin. It was 0.0000008, whatever. Today, that investment is worth $1.4 billion. It was ridiculous. And so they were saying, you know, whoever bought this, they don't know, obviously they're not trying to sell it, but if they did try to sell it, it would probably crash the Shiba Inu value. So anyway, it just goes to show how crazy it is. It's not even, it's just a made up thing that has gone up in value. Since then it's gone down. But anyway, most people are losing money. As I said, I'm having this, and whenever you see anything new, like the cryptocurrency, the pot stocks, anything that's new, you have all these people jump on the bandwagon to try to get rich, but most people end up losing money. So for example, I'm teaching this investments class and we have a contest in there where the students have a portfolio. They pick 10 stocks, $1,000 each. So they have a $10,000 buy and hold portfolio. And then at the end of the semester, we see how everyone's done. So one of my students has Tilray, that's a pot stock. And I've never invested in the pot stocks, but I said, just, let me look at that chart. Let me look at Tilray. This is what the chart looked like for Tilray. Basically like this. So what that tells you, well, let me ask you, this was like over the past few years. So what does that tell you about Tilray? About how many people have made money and how many people have lost money with this pot stock? Well, a few people made a bunch of money because it went, there were just a few investors here, went way up. Then people started to pile on as it's been going down. So I can tell you the number of people from here to here is going to be very small. The number of people from here to here, very large. So more people. So when you have situations where you have these bubbles, more people are losing money than making money. Anyway, so you can try to identify these bubbles with the indifference principle. So just remember, for the future, housing bubbles, of course, interest rates play a role. We have low interest rates now, so that kind of negates it. But it's still cheaper to buy than rent, so we're not anywhere near a housing bubble. And the housing bubble, still cheaper to buy than rent, so that's kind of in mind. So actually just the opposite of what it was before. And then the PE ratios really aren't that high. If it gets around, PE ratios get around 50 or so, then we might be looking at a pullback. But that's what analysts will do. They'll look at the PE ratio for the S&P 500 and they'll tell them when they might, maybe should take some off the table. Anyway, it's called Professor Schiller. So most people just get lucky and call something right. There's really no skill in it. But this guy actually has some skill. He's actually called two things right: the housing bubble and the market bubble, the .com bubble. Okay, so that's chapter 11. Let's look at 12. Or no, yeah, that was 11. Let's take a look at 12. Okay, so remember in chapter 6, we used the simple pricing strategy where they use the marginal cost. You produce up to a marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So in a more complex setting, that simple rule may not apply. And so this is where they talk about the complements and the substitutes. So here they're saying that if you acquire a substitute product, you should raise the price on both products to reduce the competition between them. And you should raise the price more on the lower margin product to make them less substitutable. So, so just think about it. If you've acquired the substitute, people can't. You're going to make money off of it. So you could raise the price on both and reap the benefits of that. If you acquire a complementary product, you should reduce the price on both to increase the demand for both products. And then if demand is hard to forecast, it says that you should underprice rather than overprice. So then remember, if demand is more elastic, you should reduce the price to increase total revenue. If demand is inelastic, we would increase the price to increase total revenue. And then at the end of the chapter, they talk about the psychological biases. Beware of psychological biases regarding price expectations with consumers and frame them in a positive way of gains versus losses. So can you think of any examples where companies maybe had made some mistakes with pricing or people's price expectations? What do they mean by that? Psychological biases regarding price expectations. Did you know that at one point the airlines were going to charge for bathrooms when you go to the bathroom? They were actually talking about charging to use the bathroom. there was a big uproar about that. So, because people have an expectation that bathrooms should be free in an airplane. They used to give us free food on the airplanes. Now they're charging. That hit some backlash. So have you ever, how do companies get more money out of you and yet trying to let you think that you've saved money?
Thinking you're getting something like of higher value, but really it's the same or like a larger, amount. So you think that it's really the same, I guess, like.
Well, yeah, like I'm thinking like promotions
Mhm.
where, they're cutting into that consumer surplus where they're giving, it's like a buy one, get one half off, buy two, get one free. You only intended on buying one pair of shoes, but you end up leaving the store with two or three. You've actually spent more money than you intended. But people don't like to think that they're getting ripped off. People like to think they're getting a good deal. So companies try to get you to spend more money while thinking that you're getting a good deal.
Sometimes they'll overprice things, then have a sale. cut
Yeah.
it down, yeah.
Right. Let's see, something I just was in my head and I forgot. Psychological biases. Oh, like if a cable bill increases, they'll start they used to send letters, if you've ever gotten a letter saying your cable bill is going to increase. They don't do that anymore because there's too much competition. But back in the day when cable had a monopoly, pretty much every year you get a bill in the mail saying your cable was going to increase. They would start by telling you how many channels they were adding to your lineup. Crappy channels you would never watch anyway. And then in the next paragraph, in order to give you this great service, we have to increase your bill by whatever, 10% or something. So they try to frame it in a positive manner while they're charging you more money. So, okay, let me look at these slides and see if there's something that I missed there. I'm going to go back to 11 to see if there's anything in the slides I want to talk about. Just bear with me here. Oh, this is the slide I was telling you about with the depreciation. So let's say this is the effect of $1 appreciation on golf markets in Tijuana and San Diego. So Tijuana is just south of the border in San Diego. So if the dollar appreciates against the peso, what does that mean? What does that mean for Americans? Dollar has appreciated against the peso.
So it's good for producers.
No, our exports are more expensive now. Our dollar buys more in other countries. So it's good for consumers.
Oh, yeah.
So with the strong dollar, it's going to be really cheap to go to Mexico. So they're giving you the example here. You're a golfer. You'd love to go down to Mexico and golf, or you could stay in the U.S. and golf. You can pay $30 in the U.S. It's more than that. Let's say $100 in the U.S. and golf. But with the dollar devaluation or the dollar appreciation, the devaluation of the peso against the dollar, now it's like $25 to go golf in Tijuana. So what happens here? The demand for golf in Tijuana is going to go way up. That's just like that homework problem. The demand for golf in San Diego is going to go way down. So that's what they're showing you there as an effect of the exchange rates. And here's the bubbles. So this is what happens with the bubble. So let's think about housing. There is this bubble starts. There's home ownership has increased. More people are getting loans. more people are out there looking for price, looking for homes. So demand increases. And then fewer people are selling because they want to wait for a high price, so supply decreases. So when demand increased, we had the quantity increase and the price increase, but then when supply decreased, price goes higher and the quantity decreases. And so then you can keep getting this situation, demand, supply, and the price just keeps going up. Eventually demand will decrease though, and then the price will come back down when the bubble bursts. So it's just impossible to predict when these bubbles are going to pop. There's the home ownership, there's the housing. Okay, so that's that one. Let me go to chapter 12. Oh, this is an interesting example. The Harry Potter books. Okay, so isn't it kind of fascinating? Do you guys all remember Scholastic books from when you were a kid? And they in elementary school they would pass out the little form and you could pick out the books that you wanted. They actually still do that. But I didn't realize that Scholastic was the publisher for these Harry Potter books. So what a huge profit maker for them. Anyway, listen to this. Scholastic suggested that the selling price for the first Harry Potter book was $34.99. They sold the book at wholesale retailers for $18.99. So what happened here was Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Costco, and Walmart all priced the book for less than $20. Why would they do that? They bought it for $19. They're selling it for their cost. Scholastic said it was $35. Why would they price it lower? There was a huge demand for it now, huge anticipation. Why would they price it so low? Think about grocery stores.
Is it more competition or,
You bought the first one, so you
oh, you would
would
continue?
buy the rest. So then with each one, it would increase.
Well, this is the final book. It's a loss leader, basically. They want you to come into the store. Because if you're going to go in there and buy the book, you're going to buy other stuff. And so
Oh,
they,
okay.
you see, so it basically was a loss leader. So this is a real interesting fact about Amazon. So they wanted to attract people. It's just like, having a 2-liter, a 3-liter bottle of Coke really cheap at a grocery store. They want you to come in. But look at this. Amazon estimates that 1% of its 2.8 billion second quarter revenue was due to the sale of that book. That's how crazy that was. How many people were buying it? So. Okay, so we talked about substitutes and complements. Okay, this is why I wanted to get some more examples of the psychological pricing. People are just used to buying the airline snacks now. They don't care anymore. Okay, this is interesting. Consumers are super sensitive to fairness. So here they're talking about Katrina. Home Depot didn't raise prices after Katrina, though demand did increase. Hardware stores don't increase the price on snow shovels during a winter blizzard. So, even though Home Depot could have raised prices because demand is so high, they don't want to have a backlash from consumers being that they're price gouging. This is interesting too about concerts, it says that a lot of artists will sell on the secondary market and share in the profits on the secondary market, because if they charge that much in the primary market, it would be labeled as unfair. So that's kind of interesting. All right. Oh, here's a good one too. Casinos. Why are the prices of hotels so cheap at these casinos?
Are they expecting you to spend?
You
just
spend the
for-
money on the slot
Money
machine.
money at the casino.
Yeah,
You're
Those casi-
rarely
yeah,
in your room, so.
right. So if you ever go to stay at like Beau Rivage, any of these casinos, there's no coffee maker in the room. There's nothing in the room to get you to stay in the room. They want you out of the room and on the floor. And they usually the rooms are usually pretty, well, unless it's on the weekends, but the rooms are pretty cheap because they want you there gambling. And if you're a gambler, if you want some money there, they're going to give you a free room. They want you to keep coming back until you lose the money. Because you know the saying, Vegas was not built on winners. There's a big uproar in St. Tammany Parish right now. I think the election is this Saturday. There's a big uproar about this, when they want to build a casino in St. Tammany Parish. I guess in Slidell, right when you come across the bridge. So there's a big uproar about vote no, because it's going to bring in a bad element, drugs, crime, prostitution, blah, blah, blah. So that'll be interesting to see if it passes or. But I have to say, I'm on that next door neighbor thing for St. Tammany Parish, the next door app. And somebody showed a picture of it. The picture does actually look pretty nice. It looks like a pretty nice casino. So anyway, we'll see. So they're charging the suboptimal prices on the rooms because it's going to make up for when you're out there gambling. And so, you know, I'm sure you've all taken marketing classes, maybe a psychology class. To me, it's a fascinating psychological study to go to a casino, to people watch and to see the way people behave in these casinos. It's crazy the way the psychology is. I was actually reading this study that this woman, this academic study, it was online. She actually went to Vegas and was studying the mentality of the gambler. And she was saying that these slot machine players, they actually get into a zone where they don't even really want to win. It's just like the zone of this habit of putting money into the slot machines. And the way the slot machines work is they make you feel like you're winning while they're taking your money slowly from you. So if you, like, next time you go to a casino, if you want to just do this experiment, take $20 and go to, or $10, whatever, take some money and go to one of these slot machines. You'll win a couple times, then you'll lose. You'll win once, you'll lose 5 times. You'll win again, and you'll lose a little bit more. So you win enough times just to give you hope. But in the end, they've got all your money, basically. So, but anyway, it's all about psychology, down to how cold it is at the casinos, the music that they're, next time you go to a casino, listen to the music. It's going to be like 70s feel-good music that they play, because they're catering to an older crowd and they want you to feel good when you're using your money. So they thought everything out, believe me. They just started the sports betting here in Louisiana. Did you guys read that? So there's sports betting now in Louisiana.
But I think it's also a rush too, like it's like a rush.
Oh, it is.
Cause like,
Yeah.
my grandparents, they love the casino, they love it. Like
I know my grandma.
They-
she
well,
always-
I
she
see.
goes to the casino, she turns to like,
yeah, it's like
Right.
another person.
Yeah, it's addictive.
Yeah,
It's very addictive.
Cause you can't stay away from it.
Yeah. So, you
I
know,
paid $2, I lost my $10.
Bro, I
I
walked
just-
out
I said,
yesterday,
yeah,
I
I just
said,
walked
I'm going
around.
home. I walked
I don't
out.
like it.
After I lost $10, I said, that's all right, I'm going
Me
home.
too.
well, there's something really interesting
That's
because,
embarrassing.
yeah, it is.
Well, it happens, you could be free drinks.
Well, I was in Louisiana, you guys are too young to remember this, or some of you weren't even born then, but in the early 90s, I would say,
and then there was a slow governor. That's when they legalized gambling for the most recent time. That's when they legalized gambling in Louisiana. And so I remember thinking about it. It's coming from California. I would go to Las Vegas occasionally. I've been there a couple times. So I was thinking, you know, what's wrong with having gambling? That's fine. Have some casinos here. And then as soon as I went to a casino in Louisiana or Mississippi, especially in Louisiana, not so much Mississippi because it's more tourists, I thought, oh, now I know why people didn't want legalized gambling, and I probably should have been against it. Because it's not a bunch of tourists in there gambling. It's people who are on Social Security, fixed income, who shouldn't be gambling. You know, it's true. It's true.
That's funny.
And so my husband and I sometimes will go to the Silver Slipper. And the Silver Slipper is when you go across to Mississippi, the first exit that you take, which is Waveland, it's that first casino. And they have really good food there, actually. The chef is from New Orleans. So we'll go there to eat and stuff. And so there's this, I swear to God, there's this lady there. She's probably in her early 80s, late 70s. She has this blonde ponytail. It comes out of the top of her head, comes down the side, I swear it's to her waist. She's there every freaking time we go, at the slot machines or at the poker machines. And so during COVID, you know, none of them could gamble and they were closed for so long. And so I said to my husband, I said, do you think that lady's still gonna be there? Do you think these people maybe found some other things to do in life and maybe kicked the habit? And he said no. And so sure enough, once they reopen, she's back. She's back there pretty much every time we go. It's really sad in a way.
Yeah.
So anyway, huh?
My grandmother wants to do that.
At a casino?
You have to spend so much. She probably
She
paid
goes
five.
to casino all the time, but she came home with some packs.
She probably paid $1,000 for those pots.
And didn't realize.
I'm serious. Yeah. Okay, anyway, so the pots are kind of they're not really a lost leader. They're giving away those pots, but you have to gamble away. Yeah, you gotta gamble all that money to get them. It's very insidious. It's, I mean, they're really preying on people. So they have this thing in Mississippi. They probably have it in Louisiana too. You can actually tell the casino that you want to be banned from the casino. This is true. You can tell them, you can give them your license, fill out a form if you're an addictive gambler, compulsive gambler, and you can tell them you want to be banned from the casino. Then if you have a weak moment and you walk in, they're supposed to kick you out. I'm serious.
Is there technically a way somebody else can use your ID and kick you out?
Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, it's crazy. Okay.
Another form of gambling is like playing for like football games.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yes, and a lot of older people play that, like on Social Security, love playing that.
Oh, the football pools, yeah.
Love playing the pool.
Yeah.
Don't win not a stitch of money.
Well, it's a human weakness, the gambling. It definitely is. Oh, so I know what I was gonna tell you. There's two stocks that are the sports betting stocks, FanDuel and another one. Can't think of the other one. But anyway, I was listening to CNBC the other morning coming into work, and FanDuel had a report. I thought this was fascinating. So FanDuel had this bad earnings report, and they said that they lost the first 3 weeks of September, they lost $25 million. And then the last week in September, they had, or a couple weeks, they had a $25 million swing the other way. And so I never really thought about this, but they were saying when the favorites win, they lose money overall because most people bet the favorites. So they were saying like the first 3 weeks, they're talking about pro football. The first 3 weeks in September, pretty much all the favorites won first 3 weeks of the season. But then you had some huge upsets, like the Saints beat Tampa Bay, the Saints beat Tampa Bay, and you had some upsets. So when you had those upsets, it swung back around. So they won at the beginning and lost it. They said that wrong. First 3 weeks they won, and when they had, first 3 weeks they were losing, then when they had those upsets, they won. So they had this, so they were saying they make more money when there's upsets.
If the favorites keep winning, they end up losing money. But anyway, don't get involved in gambling at all, because it's not, well, you're taking the stats class. It's not a long run, good, it's not a good situation in the long run. You're gonna lose in the long run.
That's why the younger generation has shopping addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, shopping, well, you got something to show for the shopping of it. Yeah. I could go on about that. I used to teach statistics here, and good would go on and on about the casinos and how they use statistics and stuff. That's pretty interesting. I'll just tell you one thing. There's a reason why when you go and look at the roulette wheel, they have this, they have the history of all the numbers. Okay, well, you're taking stats. Each spin of that roulette wheel is an independent event, right? Your chances are 1 in 38, because there's 36 numbers plus the 00 and 0. It doesn't matter what's come up in the past, but people look at that. They look at the numbers and they'll say, oh, look, the number 3 hasn't come up lately. I'm going to bet number 3. Or red hasn't come up lately. I'm going to bet red. Anyway, it's interesting when you talk to the people who work at the casino. Like I was talking to a roulette spinner one time, and he said, I've seen black come up like 29 times in a row. It's crazy. But each spin is an independent event. So people, of course, don't realize that. All right, so this was 12. Go to 13. Okay, and did we go over the 12 notes? Yeah, we did. Okay. Okay, let me go to chapter. Need to do that. Let me go to 13. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I don't have any notes for these. So let me just go over the PowerPoints. These PowerPoints weren't too bad. Okay, so chapter 13 is direct price discrimination. Chapter 14 is indirect price discrimination. Okay, with direct price discrimination. So basically what they're talking about with this price discrimination is you're trying to cut into the consumer surplus, get the most money out of people that you can, get the most that they're willing to spend. With direct price discrimination, you can identify the customer and charge the customer what they're willing to pay. With indirect price discrimination, you can't identify the customer, so you just have different prices and just hope that only the people you're intended to will use those prices. I'll explain that in a minute. So let's talk about direct price discrimination. Why do theaters have matinees? Why do theaters charge senior citizens less? Why do they have these senior citizen discounts everywhere you go? Restaurants, museums, theaters. What's up with this? What's up with the senior citizen discounts?
They go during the day at the slow times, so it encourages them to go.
Yeah, like the matinee prices, people normally wouldn't go during the day. But if you give them a price break, they'll go during the day. So, and if you think about restaurants, most senior citizens, they're on a fixed income. So they probably wouldn't go, and they wouldn't, theoretically, the theory is they wouldn't go out to dinner, they wouldn't go spend the money if it were a regular price. But if you can identify them, so it's direct price discrimination. So if you identify a senior, if you target the seniors and give them a lower price, then they're going to pay for that. So that's why they have these senior citizen discounts.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as well, because like I know it's like with cell phone bills, like they do that too, and I was like, that's kind of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like they charge them like different prices, like for
Okay.
instance. I
You could
know,
also say like, right, all our elders are the boomers, so we have, that's the majority of the population, but we have more older folks.
Yeah,
So targeting them would be the easiest, and if it's cheaper, they're gonna continue going, and they may bring their family or grandkids
Uh-huh.
or,
right.
yeah,
So, I mean, there's senior citizen prices everywhere. It's to get them to pay that, but it's typically what. So that's direct price discrimination, because you can identify the target markets. Or charging kids less as well. Students, charging students less. So when you can identify two consumers with different demand elasticities, you can increase the profit by charging a higher price to the group with less demand. So less elastic demand. So I was talking about, kind of doing it the opposite. They're charging less to the seniors to get them out, but they can charge more to people with less elastic demand. So basically price discrimination is simply the practice of charging different people different prices. It's not that it's not cost justified. They're just charging people more than their people who are willing to pay more are being charged more. Now, arbitrage can defeat this. In other words, if you had a bunch of seniors who got together and bought, say there was a senior discount on goods, they bought stuff really cheap and then sold it to other people, to us, then that would be arbitrage, but that typically doesn't happen. All right. You can skip that part. Let's see. So that's direct price discrimination. Indirect price discrimination is when you cannot identify the members. So a lot of times what they'll do there is they'll offer two products, one higher priced or higher quality product, another one that might be lower priced or lower quality for the lower end market. So if you think about how has Apple done this? How has Apple succeeded in price discrimination with the iPhones? Don't they have a cheap iPhone called the C or something? iPhone C or iPhone S? SE, yeah. So they've got a lower end iPhone. The higher end iPhones, I mean, the regular iPhones have an aluminum case. I don't think the SE has an aluminum case, and they sell that internationally. They sell it here too, but it's cheaper. So you can offer, you can price discriminate that way. So let's see, here they're asking what's an indirect and what's a direct pricing scheme. So tickets to a movie theater, that would be direct pricing schemes because you can identify the seniors, you're having them show an ID. Okay, what about this? Grocery stores, discount coupons. Okay, so now they're digital, but what would that be an example of, direct or indirect, using the grocery coupons?
Indirect.
Right, indirect. So here's the idea. Well, let me ask you this. So what are they of course they don't, how do they prevent everybody from using the coupons? I mean, people who are wealthier are willing to pay the full price. They're trying to target people who normally wouldn't buy the product and who want to pay the lower price. So how do they prevent wealthier people from using the coupon? Because they can't identify the groups, so they have to give the coupon to everybody.
The mail, like,
Well, it could be.
I'm not sure if that would work, but
It can be through Ibotta. If you guys have heard of that app Ibotta, they have coupons in there. There's digital coupons. Well, the point is you can't discriminate because you can't identify. But what they assume is that wealthier people aren't going to take the time to clip the coupons or whatever, or upload the coupons. So, but if everybody uses the coupon, it's not going to work. They just want the people who normally, would not buy the product to use the coupon. and the wealthier people would not. So that's the risk with this indirect price discrimination. Okay, airline, business versus economy tickets. So what do they mean by that? They can't identify people, but how does the airline industry discriminate on their prices? Typically,
First class versus economy.
well, that first class versus economy is one way. What would happen if you all went home tonight and started looking for a ticket, an airline ticket for this weekend? Would it be more or less than if you decided a month ago?
More.
Right. Yeah. So basically, economy tickets, I mean, the way they discriminate typically with the airlines is it's not that they're saving us money, it's that they're charging us more when they can charge us more. So typically, if you get a ticket, you know, well, on Southwest, it's 14 days. If you get a ticket 14 days or more out, it's a cheaper price. And so people who are a little more, you know, people who are leisure travelers or a little more cost conscious, they're going to book it well in advance and get the cheaper price. So somebody who is flying business, they'll book right away. Or if you need to fly right away, you're going to pay more. So they're making you pay more for the convenience. So it's not that they're giving us a break, they're just charging more to people who are willing to pay more. And so that the airlines are famous for that. Let's see. Oh, I know what I was trying to think of in the last chapter when we were talking about how the psychology of pricing and how people get really upset when they view the pricing as unfair. So what are these, for talking about consumer goods, what do companies do a lot, these consumer products? Instead of raising the prices, let's say it's a pound of coffee, or let's say it's cookies or some product. Instead of costs have gone up on food, instead of raising the prices, what do they do sometimes? But they think we're stupid enough to not notice.
Shrink it.
Yes, they scale back the proportions. It's so annoying. And so a pound of coffee is not a pound of coffee anymore.
A bag of chips.
A bag of chips, yeah,
This,
right, right. So a pound of coffee, a lot of them are 12 ounces now. Some of the different milks that you buy, like the oat milk, it's not a half gallon. It's smaller than a half gallon. Anyway, so what they're doing is a lot of these companies that are trying to cut back, like if you notice some cookies and such, they're just they don't have as much. They're not as much in their in the package anymore. And so, have you guys ever experienced this? Have you ever remember games that you played with when you were a kid, and then you get a game, the same game for a niece or a nephew, or your own child, and it's so disappointing that it's so cheapened? Has you guys experienced that? So I bought this you guys know Hungry Hippos? Okay, so I remember my little sister had the Hungry Hippos game and she loved it. My sister is 10 years younger than me. I mean, the game was like this big. And the hippos were like this big. It's marbles. And so you press on the hippos and they eat the marbles. So I bought this game on Amazon for my grandson, who's 2. And I had to FaceTime my mom and I said, look at this game. The hippo head's like this big now. They used to be like this big. It's really disappointing how they will cheapen stuff. And the games now today, the cardboard boxes are really thin compared to how they used to be back in the day.
Inexpensive, like the board games are very expensive.
Some of
Like
them are.
Monopoly has like really.
Yeah, I find out it was
When-
smaller.
Yeah,
Like the board is real small.
Yeah,
and they're cheap. The boards are
like
cheap.
Sorry used to be a little
Yeah.
bit bigger too, and now it's like
Yeah.
immense
Yeah,
and expensive, like they have raised the prices up.
right. So it really makes the case like to go to Goodwill and don't give them as gifts, just get the old gates. Because it is frustrating to see how these companies they'll cheapen things to save on costs instead of raising the price. So anyway, that's so these are just some examples of indirect versus direct pricing schemes. Okay, so this Robinson-Patman Act basically says that you can't charge retailers in different prices. You can't discriminate. So if you're selling to, I don't know, if you're selling to Rouse's versus Walmart, or Rouse's versus, let's say Rouse's versus Dixie, you cannot charge different prices. So they get around this. The way they get around the Robinson-Patman Act is by offering volume discounts. So they'll sell a higher quantity to Costco and give them a better price than they sell to, you know, a smaller store. Okay, and then they're also talking about the price discrimination, like for laptops. If you bought a computer, if it's for a school use or consumer use versus business, it's going to be two different prices. It's another way that they'll discriminate. This is cell phone pricing. Okay, then this is the whole psychology, we're back to the whole psychology of pricing. Only schmucks pay retail. People don't want to feel like they're paying retail. They want to feel like they're getting a good deal. So you want to make, you know, these retailers trying to make sure that shoppers think they're getting a good deal. Oh, the other thing that is in here somewhere, it's in the book. Oh, here it is. This is interesting. Online shoppers are less likely to complete their transaction once they realize that they didn't have a coupon. There's a coupon there, but it didn't exist. Or isn't it frustrating when they say, put in your email address and you'll get 10% off, but they already have your email address? So then you've got to use a friend's or something.
Or there's a coupon, but it's only for certain items.
Yeah, only for certain items, right. So. Okay. Okay, let's take another short break. Let's take 5 minutes and then we'll go over the last two chapters.